Back at it this week. Obviously, our players are fresh and ready to go with having the extra day off, and we worked on Friday and then again yesterday, and they get their day off today, and then we'll be back at it on Tuesday. And the health of our team's good, and looking forward to another week of practice.
When your run game was so much more effective in the second half, did you think it was because you executed it better, or you just wore them down ultimately?
Could be both. We were a little more open in our attack, a little bit more vertical passing game. I thought we blocked a little better, and I do think that because of the numbers that we probably wore them down a little bit later in the game.
Just off the cuff, Mike, in reviewing the offense, how much of plays not working in particular situations was physical versus just communication, something you could clean up in that area?
Well, I don't think there were many of them that were physical. I think there's just plays that communication's not as good as we would always want it to be, but just remember that about 20 to 30% of plays that are run throughout a season don't get executed properly in all of college football, in my opinion. So there'll be some of those plays. We've talked about that. That's why your quarterback, your running back, and your wideouts got to make up for it, and good skill players usually mean good offenses. So each week we'll get a little better, and hopefully we can improve as we progress through the season. That's what good football teams do. They get better each week.
Mike, we saw Darion Daniels' debut on Thursday. What's allowed him to jump into that too deep as a freshman at a pretty tough position to transition to and be productive?
Well, physically, he's a little further ahead than players that we've had in the past here. He's a 300-pounder when he walked in there. He's strong. He's got a good background. He's mentally further ahead, a little more mature than most freshmen are, and he was able to stay healthy in camp.
We had seen the half sack, obviously, in the game, but what else watching film on him maybe stood out from his performance?
Well, he's made plays in practice, and he's been competitive, and he's held his own against the offense, and his cardiovascular shape's been good. And if you can make it through camp and you stay healthy and you can absorb information, then you have a chance to play as a freshman. Here at Oklahoma State, we haven't had as many at that position because we haven't gotten that many 300-pounders. Most of the time we're bringing in 250, 260-pounders. We're developing into that position.
Jeremy Seaton said he looked like a 40-year-old the first time he saw him. He figured he had to be a JUCO guy. Is that kind of what you thought when you see a guy that big?
He's got a baby face, but body-wise, we just don't get many guys like him. And so we haven't had a history of playing young men at that position because we don't get many guys like that. And again, I bring back he's fairly strong, and he's already a 300-pounder.
But you played in the past when you had to go really young inside, it's because you obviously had to. Mm-hmm. But one guy you did play early was Castleman. Is Darion Daniels on the same level of being ready as a freshman that Castleman was?
A little further along than Castleman, sure.
Coach, how would you evaluate Central Michigan's talent level as far as ones-on-ones as to what you'd see in the Big 12?
Well, that's hard to do. You're talking about 10 teams. So it's almost impossible for me to evaluate one school against 10 teams in this league. But I would say that there are several teams in their conference on any given day, if you play them in the right environment, that they can compete with teams in this league.
Just in terms of playing mistake-free football, how did you assess your freshman return guys in terms of just catching it and not doing anything foolish?
We were pleased with the communication between Seals and Carr in kickoff returns, and I thought that they stayed level-headed. And 84 went after punts and was catching the ball and trying to return them, and that's encouraging to us as a coaching staff.
Hold your breath on that one.
Not really, no, not with him. I have a lot of confidence in his ability to catch the ball. And if you watch him every day like we do, he's going to make mistakes. I mean, there'll be times that he does it, and everybody will say, "Well, I thought you said he could do it." But if you've watched him like a month like we have, you understand why you have confidence in his ability to catch a ball.
Mason Rudolph making his home debut on Saturday. Remember the first time that you ran out on the field here, and is that a game that stands out? Does it blend in with the rest of them?
Well, mine was a little different. Mine was at halftime of a game, so and I wasn't in any position or ready to play, and it was a surprise. His is not. I think this is the first time he's played a home game in like 8 games, because in high school they played on the road in their playoffs and their state championship. So somebody asked this morning on the Big 12, was he excited? I'm sure he is. He doesn't really talk about a lot of things like that. He's a little more quiet and reserved, but I know he's got to be excited to play at home.
This will also be Larry Reese's first home game on the PA since going through throat cancer. I mean, would you follow along with his journey, and is he kind of an intricate part of the OSU family in that?
Yeah, Larry really is. He's not only with the voice of the Cowboys, but his role he plays with the athletic department, and everybody knows him, and he's got great people skills. Larry can go sit down at dinner with anybody and have a good conversation, and most of us have a hard time doing that, and Larry's always been really good in those situations. And he's a big part of Oklahoma State and Oklahoma State athletics.
I know you said before you don't really know sometimes what you're going to get in a guy's first game for you. How did Chris Carson do in that regard?
I thought Chris Carson had what I would consider a good game. There's times that he was a little hesitant to accelerate through a hole, in my opinion, but he made moves, made guys miss, spin moves, jumped outside, got us some key yards at times. So in just my opinion, after one game, which it's way too early, that he gave us something that we hadn't had, just from the ability to get out there and get more yards than what he should. I thought he ran hard. I thought at times he dropped his pads and was physical. And even though he's a junior college player and he's got a couple years on high schools, there's a considerable difference between a junior college and this level of football. So he's going to still go through a little bit of a transition. But we were pleased with what he gave us in the first game.
How was his physical recovery for 20 carries in a major college game?
Seemed fine. I don't remember, or nor did I hear about him coming off and taking himself out. So I think he was fine.
What is the biggest adjustment you think a guy has got to make when he makes that jump?
Well, the game's faster. You have bigger players who run faster, and that's really what it comes down to. It just moves a lot faster than it does at each level. The number of players at this level that can run fast and get there compared to that level, there's just a difference, and I think that's the biggest adjustment.
Mike, how much better was your line in that second half? And I mean, I'm going to assume this is going to be a work in progress for a while.
Sure.
On the offensive line, is that kind of where you're at?
Well, if you remember a couple weeks ago, that question come up, and I said we're a better offense, but we're not where we were up front in the years that we were running up 40 and 45 points a game. But they should get better each week. And as I talked about the improvement, that group with Sulaco and Crabtree playing however many games he played, 7, 8 games last year. And Victor played at a different level, but he's new, but he's at least experienced. But Paul hadn't played a lot, Lundblad hadn't played a lot, and Mike Wilson played 2 different positions. So now that we have them kind of locked in, they should improve each week. But we were better in the second half, more so because I think we opened the game up a little bit and with a little more vertical passing game, and I think that allowed our offensive linemen to have more success.
You don't wish defeat on anybody else, but I mean, does it help you at all when you see major college teams lose to lower level teams, to remind your guys you better not fall asleep this week and you better prepare?
Well, we talk about it each week, and for years we've had discussions about the parity in college football, and it continues to grow each year. And as the NCAA becomes more involved with rules and cost of living and scholarship numbers and recruiting regulations, and it just continues to grow. And so you can watch games like when we got back I think the next day, or no, it may have been the same night. I don't know. I just happened to see Western Michigan and Michigan State. Isn't that right? Was that the same night we played, or the next night? Okay, whatever. And I saw that, and they were in a position to really make that a close game at the end, and they ended up throwing an interception on the 2-yard line. They had first and goal, and they were playing at Western Michigan's stadium. And so there's some risk involved in all these games, and you just have to talk to your players about the preparation, and really you can't – I mean, we're not good enough to look past anybody. You know, we practice on the team that we're going to play this week, and that's what we've always done here.
Did you get to a pace in the second half that you liked as far as playing fast?
Not really. I didn't think we played fast enough as an offense. It was better. Again, it's because of a little more variation in what we did, and I wouldn't disagree with. We were somewhat reserved in what we were doing in that game, especially in the first half, just based on inexperience at a few key positions and being on the road, and the conditions weren't really favorable for offensive football at that particular time, and so I think we were playing smart, and I agreed with those decisions. But we didn't get to the tempo that we need to be at, in my opinion, and our offensive staff's opinion.
My twofold question. Zach Steiner was punting in his first game, and he flipped the field big twice with his and seemed to play really well. On the other hand, Ben was kicking off for the first time. Did a good job there, but do you think the kickoffs and that leg swing that he uses there had any impact on the missed field goals?
I'm going to say no. We have complete confidence in Ben. He kicked one ball very poor, and the other ball he just pulled just a little bit. Rotation on the football was good, but he will improve. But I don't think that's going to factor in, or I don't think that factored into him not making those field goals. If for some reason we feel like that happens, then we'll need to make that adjustment. But right now, that's not something that I think is a factor. And Zach played good. Zach had one punt that was poor, but for the most part, being a freshman and playing on the road and your first time you're out there, that we thought he played pretty well last Thursday night.
When Jimmy Payne got here, he was kind of the third musketeer, the guy referee, J-Dub, and Josh obviously had impact, but now he's a fifth-year starter. How have you seen his evolution, and what sort of stands out to you about how he's gotten in the position he is right now?
He's grown a lot and developed. You know, he was pretty small when he got here. I think at one time he was 208 pounds, and so he's worked hard. He's made the transition where he takes care of his classes. There was a time that he didn't show up at classes like he should when he's a freshman, and we've gotten him through that. He understands the importance of the outside world other than football, which we think is important in our organization, and he's done really good. Jimmy's quiet. He doesn't hardly ever talk. It's hard to get him to say anything. But he's really improved and matured. You know, he was the player of the game for us by our defensive coaches, and plays with great effort, really for the most part. And he's become a big part of our team at this time. You know, and I think the players see him as a leader. He's been there. He's kind of done it all.
You have to have guys like him, I would think. You know, a guy that maybe doesn't have that instant impact, but sees the bigger picture, wants to get better.
No question. And you see it with young men once they get in the program and they realize that there's more out there than just football and all the things that they have to satisfy in order to make themselves a better football player and a better person and help our team. And there's a lot of talk about that, but that's a big part of having a quality team and winning some games that maybe you shouldn't in somebody's opinion. And Jimmy kind of fits that role. And he had last summer he was in a pretty difficult class, and he had missed one, and we had gotten on him, and he said, "I've got it all under control." And, you know, we've all heard that before. And so we talked about it, and we run him for it. But he said, "I've got it under control, Coach. I've been here 4 years." And he ended up making it's either a B or an A in the class. And so I didn't want to give in to him. I never talked to him about it since, but he did kind of prove that he's grown up a little bit. When he said he had it under control, obviously he was in pretty good standing in that class, so it made us feel better.
Are you seeing some of the same sort of growth with Marcel Aitman?
Mm-hmm. He's not as far as Jimmy now. Marcel's situation's a little different. Marcel came in and played early, and at times that can be that can actually work against a player because it comes too easy to you. And then last year we didn't get as much effort as we should have gotten from him. He was just an average player, and he had a good summer, and he had a good camp, and it showed. He played pretty good the other night. And it's usually the way it is. The guys are mentally focused and they're into it and they're unselfish and they're playing with effort, then they usually play pretty good in games.
With what you were observing and hearing on your headset, what was your sideline like when Central Michigan drove and scored early on you guys?
It was really fine. The coaches were fine. I don't think there was any issue. I looked at the offensive guys. They were good. Mason was fine. So, you guys asked me about Troy a couple weeks ago, and my response to you was I think we're further along as an organization. There's just more maturity as a team, and that if we get in that situation, we should be able to battle back just from years of service. And that's really kind of what happened there. Everybody just kept playing, and it made some plays, and then we were able to just kind of control the game.
Along the lines of that question, you used to use the term body language and attitude all the time. During games now, don't see you having to harp on that much. Maybe you do it in the locker room before games, but
Right.
Your bench really doesn't flinch. It seems
we talked to him on Thursdays about it as a reminder. We talked to him at the hotel before we travel to the stadium, home or away. But we don't really have many issues with players that draw attention to themselves, and our players don't yank their helmets off and slam helmets down, and we don't have arguments with coaches and discussions that are what we think are inappropriate to the overall success of an organization. We just don't have any issues here with our players now, and it's just because there's been so many years of guys that have realized that the younger ones watch the older ones. At any time, anything can happen. We all know that. There's 75 of us out there, and they're the ages of 18 to 23, so they're capable of losing it, but it doesn't happen very much.
You and Robert mentioned him a little bit. Don't you think what Zach Snyder did was about as good as any guy has done here in his first game for what he does?
He did. He had a good game, sure. He
was really pressured, didn't you?
Right. The first time, they came after it the first time, and then they came after it the third time. They brought 8-man pressure, which is somewhat unusual to bring an 8-man pressure. It was a good call on their part. They're trying to find a way to steal a possession, and you bring 8-man pressure, then you're not covered down. If somebody went out for a pass, you could flip it over your head to them, and it should be a first down. Still got to plant it, still got to throw it, still got to catch it. But there was twice they brought 8-man pressure, and our protection was good. You're always one short because you only have 7. They got 8. And he stayed there. He kept his direction in line with his punt. His punt foot was right in the middle of the shield like it's supposed to be, and he executed fairly well.
He talked about Rob and Gary Calcagna worked with him on his biceps over the summer. So for a punter, that's a pretty decent image.
I wouldn't cut my sleeves off yet if I was him.
Well, he already has.
But he does look okay for a punter. But he hadn't got quite to. We've had some guys here in the past that those special teams guys are into all that stuff. But he's done well. He's another guy that doesn't really talk much. He's really quiet, but he's done well up to this point.
I'd like to talk a little bit about just your level of confidence with your special teams in general.
Well, I really like what Robbie does. I think Robbie has developed into as good a special teams coach as we ever had here. And I like his schemes. And we're much more mature than we have been, particularly last year. If you look at our cover units, the guys that are covering have played here, with the exception of Magruder, who's young, but the other guys have all been covering kicks and punts. And so it's easier to teach them. We're not starting with a new template. They understand it. They can bring back the information that we gave them last year, and they can go out and execute it. And it should help us. We were good. Overall, we were good in special teams last year. And we should be at least that good, if not better, this year with the experience that we have.
But don't you have to be more consistent knocking home field goals. I mean, you had a little issue at the end of the Cactus Bowl.
I leave all that to the side. If we don't get better at that, it's not going to matter. You're exactly right. I mean, the cover units, the protection units, that part of it, but we got to make field goals, no question. When we have an opportunity to score within 45 yards, for the most part, we've got to knock those things down. I agree 100%.
Mike, Central Arkansas ran something like 103 plays on Saturday.
105.
It's good to see your team go up against a non-conference opponent that runs that tempo,
Sure.
maybe help them go into the big play.
And they've done very well on offense. When you look at the points they accumulated, the number of plays they had, all while being in a game when the other team was doing the same thing, that's not easy to do. And they have a good scheme, and they know what they're doing. Their quarterback is he's active enough to move around and make some plays, and unbalanced in motions and different things they do. They have a good scheme, and they understand it, and they know what they're doing. So it'll be good for us. It'll be a good game for us. It'll be a good challenge for our guys to go out and play. We need to improve in those areas. We need to get better in offense, and we need to be play faster. We need more big plays, and it's a game that we need to go out and improve and compete against ourselves, and understand that Central Arkansas has had a history of moving the ball and scoring some points.
It's not often you hear of a high school football star playing tennis.
Mm-hmm.
James Washington, was that something you guys were aware of when you recruited him, and do you think that helps?
Well, I don't know if it helps football-wise. I know that it helped us think that he was really athletic, because to run around and hit a little ball with a racket and make it go in the right area can't be as easy as what people would think it would be. And I think there's a really good story to that. I hate to go into great detail because I may be off some, but I think he just went out and played that spring and went deep into the state tournament without even having lessons and playing. He just went out and played. So he's very athletic, and he's made a lot of big plays. He's a guy that makes some really fancy catches in practice.
What do you think his ceiling is, or what he's capable of in his career?
Well, he should be a very good player. He's got a good demeanor and good temperament. He has a good attitude. He likes to play the game. He's another player that's quiet and reserved, and he's unselfish. So those guys usually do very well in college.
You had 10 different guys get catches of that. You think that's just the way it's going to be?
Should be. We've talked about that for 6 months, that we have a number of guys that can make plays. And they have to be unselfish. James Washington, if there's years here that he would be a 12-catch-a-game guy. Same thing with Shep, and if Aitman continues to play, same thing with him. Glidden. Seals is a guy that's made catches here. We've got a number of guys. We're just going to have to spread it around and try to get the ball to everybody and keep them healthy.